As a defender, you will get dodged on all over the field. Each position you're placed in requires a different mindset and a toolkit to win the matchup. The most complicated has to be X defense. Guarding an attackman X can quickly become a mental battle rather than a physical one. You must split your focus from your matchup to the pick in your peripheral vision. Suddenly you have to navigate the back of the cage as your man cuts back and forth. It's easy to become overwhelmed with X if you don't have the base fundamentals locked in. Today I'll cover all the fundamentals of X defense and work through various scenarios from two-man games to back corner isolations. Let's get into it. There are 2.1 million lacrosse players in the world, and only 3% of them will get recruited to play D1 lacrosse. Every player is working just as hard as you, making it impossible to get ahead. To become a D1 player, you need to work smarter than everyone else. Video analysis is the newest technology to work smarter and become the best player in the field. Visit the link in the description to get your film analyzed by the nation's best players. After a single session with a coach, I promise you'll be one of the smartest players in the field. Let's get back to the video. Let's start with angles. Depending on where your matchup is, you should line up at different angles. If you find yourself lined up dead center at X, you should play your matchup dead center. Even if you know your matchup is only one-handed, I would argue that playing dead center is better. Many players who try to shade aside in this position end up getting baited into opening their hips and losing leverage. If your man is off center, you want to set him towards the back of the cage. You should split his body with your inside foot and keep your hips square. Again, you don't want to shift your hips and completely shade the top side because you'll get beat downfield. If your matchup is in the corner, I would still recommend the same splitting the body technique or play your matchup square. What you want to deny is this direct line to the cage. Even if you lose topside leverage, your man is so far out that he isn't much of a threat. Now let's talk about tips on the actual coverage. The one concept that is mandatory to understand at X is staying in a trail position. X defense is unique in the fact that you have the angle advantage. Since you can cut through the crease, you can trail your defender to give yourself more time to react to a rollback. Trailing at X is much easier said than done though. Instinctually, you want to react to every movement your man makes. My biggest tip is to think about having your stick in your man's back pocket. Another cue I heard from Brett Makar is to be able to see the numbers on the back of your matchup's jersey. Now if your matchup rolls back, your stick's already there and you're ready to play defense. At a certain point though, you have to shift from trailing to sealing or driving out. In making this decision, you know that your man has chosen a direction and won't roll back again. As you reach goal line extended, you have to make a judgment call. If you're still in that trail position, you want to drive your man out and away from the cage. If you find yourself even or a step ahead of your matchup, you want to seal them. You have two options when you're sealing. You can either come into a V-hold or get your feet upfield and seal the top side with your body. Some coaches prefer one or the other, but I would argue knowing both is useful. It's also important to note that you can only V-hold on one side of the cage. Generally, V-holds work very well if you're a slight step behind because you can use the length of your stick to seal the top side. The keys to a V-hold are to stay balanced and continually move your feet. If you have a step on your man, you can get both of your feet upfield and jam your man to seal the top side. When both of these options aren't viable, you want to focus on driving your man's back hip up and out. You're playing an angles game now. The farther away from the cage you can push your matchup, the lower the probability of scoring. Next, let's talk about picks at X. In my off-ball video, I discussed different pick strategies at X and the mindset of the off-ball defender. In this video, we will focus instead on navigating the picks as the on-ball defender. The first key is to listen to your teammates. You can only look at so many things at once. If you spend so much of your visual focus glancing back at the pick, your man will cut away when you're not looking. Listen for which side the pick is on. Once you've processed that, you now have to decide if you have an opportunity to look back at it. If you have a decent cushion between you and your man, you can take a glance back to understand where the pick is. Without this cushion, you'll get dodged on as soon as you look away. Once the pick is identified, you now have to navigate it. In most positions at X, you want to get under picks. The reason is that your man is not an immediate shooting threat. This allows you to play with a heavier cushion and choose the path of least resistance below the pick. In practical terms, you should identify where the pick is and then backpedal or find a way to get below it. Another advantage of moving below a pick is your gained vision. Now you can see your matchup and the pick all in one view. Razor picks are picks on goal line extended. The difficult thing about them is the mess that's created when you go under. By going under, you put yourself in a major trail position where you have to navigate the goal and your teammate. To avoid this, you need to get over the pick and the most effective way to do it is to play a more aggressive coverage on your man. This will keep you away from goal line extended and allow you to jam them away from the pick to give yourself room to get over. Now let's talk about stick checks. Your main focus of X defense should not be takeaways. Rarely do you see defenders land big checks on attackman at X. Your main focus should be on your angles and sealing the top side at GLE. But there's 2 points during the dodge that contact should be initiated. At the beginning of the dodge, you can throw a one-handed poke check. This forces the dodger into action and puts you more in control. While this sometimes can result in a takeaway, it shouldn't be your main focus. After your poke, you don't want to end up in body-to-body contact. There's no need for hard contact because your man isn't a threat yet. You should play your angles, and as soon as you reach goal line extended, you can seal and play as much body as possible. As a right-handed player, you can throw large ceiling slap checks when your man drives to his left hand. To summarize, the general rule of thumb is to wait for contact until you hit GLE in most cases. I'll finish with a couple of broad tips that apply to X defense. First, never feel rushed at X. Having the ability to cut through the crease gives you the advantage in the matchup, so don't bite on the first split or roll you see. Stay patient and wait till you know exactly where your man is going. Second, be wary of refusals on picks. Many attackmen will refuse a pick, which means they'll go the opposite direction of it. As a defender, this can throw you off because your instincts are telling you to go in the direction of the pick. To counteract this, try and wait as long as possible before you open your hips to one direction below the pick. Try and react to your matchup instead of guessing which way they will go. Lastly, spend time practicing footwork behind the cage. The more time you spend there, the less time you have to think in the moment. Your surroundings become engraved in your brain, so you don't even have to think about navigating the back of the goal. Learning to play X defense can be a hard process. I hope some of these guidelines and fundamentals will help you on your journey. If you want to shortcut this journey, visit the link in the description to get your film analyzed by some of the best players in the country.